a sermon that was preached to sinners and very clearly stated in the scripture, Luke chapter 15, verse number 1, we find that Jesus is about to preach a sermon, and the audience is publicans and sinners and scribes and Pharisees. And so he begins the sermon talking about lost things. He talked about a lost sheep. He talked about a lost coin. And then lastly, he talked about a lost young man. And in every case, he talks about how that when that which was lost is found, heaven erupts in praise and joy and thanksgiving. Angels begin to proclaim the glory of God and rejoices over this that was lost that is now found. And of course, when he talked about the sheep, he was equating that to humanity. When he talked about the coin, he was equating that to humanity. But now as we take a look at the last lost thing that we find described in the 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, is we find an angry young man. And I've said this before, and I'll just repeat myself, is that I don't believe this was the first time that this son and this father had had this conversation about this young man receiving his inheritance early and being able to take what he considers to be his own and leave the family unit and go out on his own, and as the expression is, to do his own thing. And the father, I believe, had just come to that place in his life when he realized there's no communication here, and something has broke down. And the only way that I'm going to be able to see him saved is by turning him loose. And it's a tremendous sacrifice on the behalf of this father. But I believe that this father is like a lot of fathers, and myself included. You raise your children to follow after God. You do your best to set the right example, and you hope and you pray that everything will turn out well. And sometimes there's problems along the way. We've all experienced that. And we've all came to that place to where sometimes we have to say, God, I can't deal with this. I've just got to give this to you. And I believe that's what this father did. He just had to turn him over to God and say, God, I'm just going to put him in your hands, and I'm going to believe that you are going to do the work of salvation. And of course, as things progressed and things went from bad to worse in the life of this young man, to that day when he finally came to the reality that, hey, I think maybe my father knew what he was talking about. And then he wanted nothing more than to go home and be a part once again of the family unit. And you see, to me, this is a beautiful work of God's grace, God's mercy, and God's saving work. This is Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.